Hello and greetings. My name is Rob Hopkins from Transition Network, and I'm really sorry that I can't be with you in person today. The alternative was trying to give this presentation by Skype from a train carriage somewhere between London and Denmark, which we felt this might be a bit of a lower risk way of doing it. So thank you very, very much for the invitation to be here. And I want to start off my presentation with two different bottles of beer. And this first bottle of beer is brewed in my town here of Totnes in Devon, which is the home of the first transition initiative in the world. And it's an IPA that we brewed here in the town. And this is a bottle of Budweiser. And what I want to do really is to just start off by giving a sense of two different economies that are running along side by side, but told through these really. So this beer is really brewed as part of an ecosystem of local enterprises, local businesses, a whole network of enterprises in this town that support each other, that work with each other, that feel part of a shared culture. This is not a brewery which is seeking to completely dominate the market. It sees itself as being an ecosystem and has already actually led to a couple of other breweries starting up in the town and wants to share its expertise with them to create driven by wanting to the town to produce the best beer possible for people to travel to the town because the beer is so fantastic. This is a beer which really seeks to completely dominate the market and which has dominated the beer market in America for a very long time until the recent explosion of craft brewing in America, which is now about 13-14% of all the beer sold in America, is now sold from thousands and thousands of small independent craft breweries who have a real connection to place, to where they're from. In the UK now there's 200 new breweries opening every year, which is the most we've seen for 70 years. The Office for National Statistics now use craft beer in this country as one of its indicators for measuring inflation. What we've seen as well with the explosion of craft beer from a public health perspective is that actually the overall amount of beer being drunk is going down, but the quality of beer is coming up. And what intrigues me is that the shift from this to this is being driven not by some political campaign, by lobbying, by somehow pointing out how terrible the big company is in that way. It's really driven by the fact that these small local independent craft beers taste so much better, and then once you've drunk this you would never go back to this. What we're seeing happening around the world is a shift from this to this, a shift from massive corporations who seek to want to dominate the market to an ecosystem of businesses working together, but also that are rooted in place. If one of the messages of this talk I'd really like you to take away is that place really matters, that local economies really, really matter. So I'm the founder of the Transition Movement, which is now active in about 50 countries, of communities coming together to reimagine and rebuild the world around them. It's very positive, it's very solutions focused, it's very entrepreneurial. For the recent climate talks in Paris, COP21, Transition Network produced a book called 21 Stories of Transition. They really help to overcome this idea that somehow work done at a community scale, work done at a local scale, this kind of economy is small and irrelevant and not really impactful, and the only way to really make a difference is to aim to be a huge company like this. Actually, what we found was the real impacts of what communities are doing. For example, the 21 stories in our book had generated over 18,500 hours of volunteer input from local people. £1 million worth of community currencies into circulation. £13 million that otherwise would have been invested wherever had been invested into community renewable energy owned by local people. £5 million worth of construction, house building was now underway, run by those groups, and over 1 million miles of car travel had been saved. Enough equivalent to driving to the moon and back 2.5 times had been cut through communities doing it themselves, not waiting for permission from national government. So this idea that place matters is something that we see coming from a range of different places. So here in the UK, Preston City Council in Lancashire did an analysis where they got together with the local university, the local police, the local hospital, the 7 biggest stakeholders in the city and said, where do we spend our money? Where does our money go? And they mapped that, and they found that the £750 million they spend as a local authority and as a range of organisations, only 4% of it is spent into the local economy of Preston. The rest of it just leaves through how they make their choices. So the local economies that we see around us, the businesses we see around us, are the result of 1,000 choices that we make every day. And as an organisation, they now talk about wanting to become more embedded in place. And that's really the big idea I'd like to bring to your conference today, is the idea of thinking about the businesses that you manage becoming more embedded in place. I read an article recently looking at post-COP21 in Paris, looking at strategies that people put forward for how we respond to climate change. And they said that they argue there are three things. One is how does it treat the earth? How does any solution we come up with treat the earth? One is what are its cascading effects in terms of its knock-on impacts? But the third one was, does it push power up or down the pyramid? So if we go for nuclear, for example, it pushes the power up because it tends to be controlled by fewer and fewer people. If we talk about solar, then we have the opportunity to democratise, to decentralise, to empower at the local scale. So for me, many of the decisions that we make as companies should be about how do we disperse potential and possibility to the communities around us, to the local economies of the place where we live. And all too often, big companies, although they're physically based in a place, actually most of their relationships are elsewhere. They're in the cloud, they're to a global customer base. So although a business might have a campus in one place, might be based in one place, have its offices in one place, often has very little relationship to the people around it. Many of the people who work for it will be coming in from the local community, will live locally and may be actively themselves involved in all kinds of different things in that local economy. They may support new enterprises and all that kind of thing. But the business itself has no connection to it at all. So I'd like to suggest that this model of community-led development that we see happening in transition and in other things could accelerate so much faster and could bring so many benefits to businesses who wanted to engage with and work with that. It would be a really exciting collaboration. So I'm speaking to you today from Totnes in Devon, as I said, which is the first transition initiative, home to our brewery. And Totnes has been one of the places that's really been on the vanguard of trying to model a new approach to how we develop our economy, what community-led development might look like. For example, we created an economic blueprint here where we mapped the local economy and we said, where does this town spend its money? How much money do we spend on food every year? And how much of that is spent through local independent businesses? How much of it is spent through big national chains? And we found that of the £30 million we spend every year, £22 million is spent through just 2 supermarkets, 17.5 million through just one single supermarket. So if we could make a 10% shift to supporting local food businesses in this town, that's £2 million in our local economy every year. That's economic development. That's economic development we can do today that can revolutionise the economy of the place where we live. More jobs, more security, and so on. We run an event every year called a Local Entrepreneur Forum that brings together people who have ideas for businesses that they want to start with potential investors, with potential mentors. It's modelled on something they do in Silicon Valley. We have people who stand up, they present their business, and we say, everybody in this community is a potential investor in this place. Whether you can lend someone a pen or €10,000 or let them use a building of yours or create a website for them, all of that is investing in the business. It's a fantastic model. We've run it for 4 years. So far it's generated £70,000 worth of investment into a series of businesses, all of whom feel connected and who come back to the event every year. It's a model which is now starting to pop up outside of Totnes and happen in other places too. We have a local currency called the Totnes Pound. We have an investors network of people who are always looking out for interesting, innovative, entrepreneurial projects that they might get involved with and invest in. We have a community-owned renewable energy company called the Totnes Renewable Energy Society, which has 570 members who have all invested in increasingly large and ambitious projects. We have a project called Transition Homes, where the community is becoming a developer. And I'm also involved with something here which is called Atmos Totnes, which is where the community is becoming its own developer on an 8-acre derelict industrial brownfield site to turn it into a place for homes, for work, for all kinds of stuff. It's a fantastic project. But this is really starting to just give a taste of what community-led development can look like. In the city of Bristol, where they have the Bristol pound, the local currency for the city of Bristol, the local mayor takes his full salary in Bristol pounds. You can now spend the Bristol pound on buses, on train tickets. You can pay your energy bills with Bristol pounds. You can pay your council tax with Bristol pounds. Many businesses actually now have the Bristol pound electronically on their payroll. So if you work for a company, you can receive a percentage of your salary in Bristol pounds. And what they're finding in Bristol as a council is that they become a real driver as an organisation for them thinking about local economy in a different way, how they procure goods and services in a different way. And we see this happening all over the world, from big things like Bath and West Community Energy here, a community energy company that has raised over £10 million worth of investment from local people, to small projects, communities coming together, starting new gardens, working together to do a whole amazing array of different things, repair cafes, whatever. So my question to you is, there is this economy already happening. This is happening everywhere and it's growing incredibly fast. I mentioned craft beer even, has grown enormously. This interest in good food, in community energy, in local economies, this stuff is growing really, really fast. And very often more established businesses sit alongside that but don't interconnect with it really in any kind of a way. What would it look like if your business was a catalyst for this? What would it look like if there was a local entrepreneur forum in the place where you live and your business were to support it, were to offer the expertise of some of its key staff as an offering to people whose business ideas you're inspired by, who come through this? What would it look like if you imagined the place where you work in a different way? If you're based on a campus like this, what would it look like if you imagined it instead as a market garden, as a place that could create work, create food for people? If you'd imagined it as a community power station that was able to generate energy for the local community, but also to invite them to invest in and to benefit from that too? What would it do if you were like Preston City Council and you looked at your procurement as an organisation in a different way and set out with the intention of saying, how can we become more embedded in this place? How can we really become a driver for an economic transformation of the place where we're based? What would it look like if we imagined our CSR, corporate social responsibility strategy in a different way, so that what we were actually doing was sending some people out into this place rather than sending them off to wherever in the world to do good things, although of course that's fantastic as well. What would it look like if we sent some of our people to take their expertise into this community to support the emergence of this kind of new local resilient economy? Because this is the time when we really need to be starting to put these kind of economies in place. One of the things I love about living here in Totnes is the fact that after 10 years of doing this work, you can really start to see a difference. There are now lots of businesses emerging here that weren't here before, that feel part of this invitation towards community-led economic development, whether it's a community construction company, community energy company, all manner of food businesses, breweries, whatever. There is a new economy emerging here that you can see and taste and feel and touch. And I visit lots of places that are doing transition all around the world. And you see the same thing happening there as well. And there is an excitement and a passion to that, which is so much more powerful than just sitting back and allowing whatever to happen to us, being passive. This is really a time about people and place and communities refusing to be passive anymore, not deciding they need permission, but stepping up and creating that new economy. And we're moving quite fast, but we could move a lot faster and a lot more skillfully with your support and engagement and working alongside some places. And also there's a real offering to business, I think, in terms of really helping it to connect to the place where it is and to that new economic story. So I hope this has been a useful contribution. I'll hand over to my colleague now who will tell you more about what this looks like in Belgium, in the Belgian context. But here at Transition Network, we're here to help, to support, to catalyse, to help in whatever way we can. I hope that you have a great rest of your conference and that this has been a useful contribution. So, cheers.